Hey ladies. So, based off of a question that I got from one of you guys, I actually decided to film a little impromptu video. I guess you could call it a tutorial. Why not? Of the Hinge movement. So, let me see. What can I say about the Hinge movement? So, one of my favorite movements, the deadlift and the kettlebell swing, two of my favorite moves of all time, are based off of the Hinge movement. It's also, in the very beginning, a little bit hard to get down. We're not used to moving this way. Actually, clarification, we're all born knowing how to move this way, but over time we forget how to move in this way. So it's a very natural, functional, it's a hot topic word right now, move. But again, most of us have forgotten how to do it. So I'm going to break it down for you right now. Even if you've done the deadlift before, it might be worth watching. That being said, there's no way I could possibly cover everything there is to say about hinging or deadlifting in this one impromptu video. So this is really like, let's get back to basics and talk about what the hinge really is. So by the way, with all personal training clients that come to me relatively new to exercise, I do exactly these drills with them because it is so important to get the movement down properly before you add heavy weight. I love lifting heavy, but it is a mistake, and it's a mistake that I have made in the past, to do so without properly learning the movements first. So let's go ahead and get started. So the hinge is talking about hinging at your hips. So a lot of times people don't necessarily even know what hinging at your hips feels like when they first get started. Most often when we bend over to get something, we actually bend at our waist. So I'm going to turn it to the side to show you what I mean by that. So if I'm just going to pick something up from the ground, put this down. There, I just kind of actually did it a little bit. We usually do something kind of like this, right? Big rounding of the spine. It's actually coming from right here. It's not coming from my hips. It's coming from my waist. Kind of just did it again. I kind of did a squatty one right there. That is actually one of the number one ways people get injured, is by bending over to pick something up improperly. So when people get scared of deadlifting, my usual response to them is that we just want to learn to deadlift properly by getting those movement patterns down, because that's going to save you, actually, from having one of the most common injuries there is, which is bending over to pick something up the wrong way. So we're not going to bend at our waist. We're going to hinge at our hips. What does that mean? What I usually have people do is stand with their feet right below their hips. If you're not sure what hip distance is, then you want to start with just a couple, just basic jumps up and down. And wherever your feet land, that's your hip distance. Your toes are pointing straight ahead of you. And then I want you to literally take your fingers, like I'm doing, don't feel silly, take your fingers and push your hip bones, feel for them, dig around, they're in there, push your hip bones back to the point where, yeah, you're sticking out your butt, your back is nice and long and flat. Stand back up, you feel a little bit robotic when you do it. It's literally just pushing the joint back. You don't get the same effect by trying to push at your waist, necessarily. So do that a few times. Really get a feel for it. When you go all the way back, you'll feel it in your hamstrings, so feel a nice stretch there. For now, keep your legs straight. In deadlifting, you definitely do bend your knees a bit, but just while you're getting the feel for what hinging means, go ahead and keep your legs straight. It'll let you feel it in your hamstrings a little bit more. Most people, when they're first getting started, need to, what I say, as waking up the back side of their body. I'll get into that, like why that is later. Most of us need to kind of encourage our hamstrings and our glutes to get engaged. So that's what we're doing when we practice this. Load up the hamstrings, stand back up. Okay, so that's just practicing the actual hip hinge. That's the most basic variation that there is. So usually I start people off with a cable pull through to really get that hip hinge down. So practice that with nothing, no weight or anything like that first. If you have a cable machine, you'll start with the cable machine behind you, or you can attach a resistance band to a sturdy object. Unfortunately, I am without materials at the moment, but you all have cable machine pull-throughs and Trainerized, so feel free to look at it there for now. I'll also link to a video somewhere below. Anyway, you have the cable machine behind you, have the pulley attachment about right between your feet. You can take a slightly wider stance for this one if you want to, than just hip distance. You're going to grab the pulley, and then you're just going to do that hip hinge again. So hinging at the hips, pulling to stand up. You're just standing up straight, you're not coming back super like this. just coming to standing straight. Hinge, snap into position. Hinge, snap in position. So what is not happening with the cable pull through is one, bending of the waist. So we're not doing this. See, my back is not flat anymore. I bent from right here versus the hip. There's a lot less power in this too. It also looks less safe, to be honest with you. So again, nice flat back, hip hinge. If you've done the kettlebell swing, you can see the resemblance already, right? It looks very similar when I don't have anything in my hand. The other thing, the second thing that is common to happen when you're practicing the hip hinge or the deadlift or the kettlebell swing, to be honest with you, is making it squatty. And by that I mean is that you're adding more of a knee bend than you are hinging at the hip. It's very common. So that would look a little bit more like this. Right? Big knee bend, and then I'm standing up. It may not even be that dramatic. Even something like this is too squatty. So again, it's not that you can't bend your knees, but what happens is when you're deadlifting or hinging, that you bend the knees, but also push them back to continue loading the hamstrings. They don't shoot forward like they would in a squat. They stay back, even though they do get bent. Don't worry about that too much right now. I'm just saying that for clarification so you don't think that all hip hinges are super straight-legged. You definitely don't want to lock out through your knee, but more on that later. So master just the body weight hip hinge first, right? Get to know what that feels like. That's the most important thing. Then master the cable pull through or resistance band pull through, which can be done practically anywhere. Once you really feel that hinge and snap in position, always squeezing your glutes nice and tight to make sure you're fully extending through the hips, then you can go towards the kettlebell deadlift, which I'll show. Actually, I'll show you right now. I have a kettlebell right here. I'm actually gonna move my high quality video camera, aka the iPhone, so you can get a slightly better view. I know that I'm filming this in portrait, guys. Sorry, but it's too hard to get my whole body on the landscape. All right, kettlebell deadlift. Go ahead and choose something with some heft. You know, get some feedback there. We definitely always want to choose challenging weights, okay? So again, push those hips back until you know exactly what that feels like. Keep chopping at the hips. Doesn't matter if you feel silly. Nobody's looking at you. So chop yourself at the hips, keep that back nice and flat. Then you're gonna bend your knees just a little bit to grab the kettlebell, but notice they're not shooting forward, right? My hips sunk, my knees shot forward. That's a squatty deadlift. Instead, I hinge, bend